very honored to be here today, to be here to share with you the passing of a good friend of Cleveland, a man that will be much missed by his family, by his friends, and by the Cleveland city that he touched in so many different ways. Mr. Mike Altman was an amazing man. He really excelled in being just a good human being, a great father, a great grandfather, a great friend, an overall person that everyone wanted to get to know and liked the more that they knew him. And even though, he's been with his illness and he's been getting older, it's still a very difficult loss for our community, for us to lose someone who we felt that our community was built upon. One of those people who was the old generation Clevelanders, who was a builder of the community and a builder of people. And the way that we have a beautiful Cleveland today is because of hardworking people like Michael Altman. We'll start with a selection from the Tehillim. Mizrah David, Adonai mi yagor ba'ochalecha, mi yishkon bahar kadshecha, helech tamin ufal tzedek, v'dover emes belvavai, lo ragol al lishanoi, lo asa l'reichu ra'a, v'cherpa lo nasa al krovo, nivse be'einav nimas, v'yisiri Adonai yikabed, nishba lahara v'lo yamir, kasper lo nasa beneshech, v'shechat al naki lo yilakach, Aisa Ela lo yimot le'olam. Psalm 23. Mizrah David, Adonai roi lo iksar, Binai steshach yarbitzeni, al me menuchos yanachaleni. Nafshi eshovev yancheni v'maglei tzedek leman shemo. Gam ki elach begeit samaves, lo yirara ki ata imadi. Shiftecha umishantecha, hema yanachamuni. Tarach lefanai shulchan, neged zayrai, Dishante v'shem en roshi kosi ravaya, achtov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai, v'shavti v'beis Adonai la'orech yamim. This is not an easy day for anyone, for the family in particular. We lost our dear Michael this morning, and since then, a lot of things have come together, fortunately. The fact that so many people from the community are here to share in this service, the fact that he will be able to go on to Israel and be buried next to his wife and in a large family plot with the 6 siblings once all together in the same place. It is a very hard day. It is a very sad day. But at the same time, the more I think about Mr. Altman, I think how inspired I am because I knew him. There's so much that he gave me and taught me and everyone else in this room that were very different because we knew him. I knew many Holocaust survivors, but for me, Mr. Altman was a Holocaust hero. He came from the ashes of the Holocaust and was covered in the dirt and the horrible things that surrounded him, but he really shook it all off and he moved forward to be a builder and a giver. I don't know how he managed to forget all the pain. He didn't really forget it. He lived with it, but he made it look like he forgot it. He forgot all the bad things, but all the good things he remembered. He brought Europe with him to America. The way you treat people, the work ethic, the honesty, the focus on the shul and the community, that was like in the old days of Europe. There's many things that I would like to say, but this is very much an opportunity for his family, who like him are very strong, and they have a lot to share, and they have a lot to give. And in this hard day when all this happened, it's amazing that they can be here today to share their beloved father, their beloved grandfather with you today. Just one of these quick lessons that I wanted to share was that many times in life we have excuses. If people were mean to us, once in a while it's okay if we're mean to other people because, that's what we're used to. That's what we experienced. But I think with Mr. Altman, it was the opposite. Because people were unkind to him, they treated him badly. As a result, he became the example of caring and compassion. He didn't have bread and water. He didn't have food. He starved for many a day. But he said, you know what? I'm going to feed people in abundance. I'm going to fill people's till they have no appetite left whatsoever, that they will never know any form of not having the right foods. He saw lots of sadness, but he only gave joy and happiness to other people. And he suffered silence, and he heard terrible sounds in his life. but all he wanted to do was to share his beautiful voice and his beautiful sounds with other people. And lastly, I just want to share that the purpose of our lives is to take our soul, which is very pure, and the soul wants to achieve very high and very good things, and the soul convinces this body that just wants to rest and take it easy, that you can do more. That when I saw Mr. Altman in his illness, where he didn't remember a lot of things that he used to remember, but what his body knew to do was because his soul trained his body to be like a malach, to be like an angel. Even though he didn't know where he was, what time it was, what his circumstances were, he knew he needed to go to shul. He knew he needed to open up his siddur and daven. He knew his family that he loved so much. He loved the people, and he could smile and give to them, even when he wasn't sure where he was in the place and the time. So we will truly miss him, and his memory should always be for a blessing. It's a privilege for me to call upon his family, who so much lived in the legacy and example of his greatness. So I don't know how she can do it, but I'm going to first call upon his daughter, Mickey Weeder, to share with us a few words.
Thank you all for coming. As you know, my father was the penultimate people person. Your presence here today to honor his memory is something that would warm his heart. Many years ago, the headmaster of the school that Adam went to spoke about the problem affecting our youth. He talked about the fact that there were no longer any heroes that children could look up to use as role models, not just children but adults, from politicians to sports figures to indeed in almost any role. We continue to be witness to scandal, disappointment, and disgrace. Immediately, as he spoke, and it's still a memory in my mind, it's almost 30 years ago, I thought about myself, how fortunate I was to have a father who was a hero in the largest sense of the word. I'm going to tell you a story about why I say this. As many of you know, my father survived the Holocaust during his adolescence. During that time, the way he survived was he, at some points, had Aryan papers, which allowed him to pass as a non-Jew. And he would work, whatever kind of work he could, with these Aryan papers. And so here's the story of what happened. I think it's kind of emblematic of one of my father's most heroic feats, I think. So at one point, in between hiding in forests to survive, he was able to work on a farm because the men who worked the farm had been conscripted to the service and he was available. And so he was helping a woman and her children run a farm that was left behind. He realized that she had a large barn and he could shelter about 10 people in the loft in the barn. Now, if he were found out, he would certainly be killed, but everybody else also would be. So he needed to be very careful about how he did it. So he hid about 10, I think it was 10 exactly, family and friends in this hayloft. And by day, they had to lay low. In other words, they needed to be horizontal in the hayloft and not move, because it didn't need to be any sounds that anybody else could recognize that there were people hiding there. And by night, so by day, they laid low. He was working, so he was allowed to be in the barn, and he would bring them whatever kind of food he could scrounge around from being on a farm and so forth, and he would carry their waste away every day. And by night, he left them a ladder so that they could climb down and stretch their legs and get some fresh air. And so he did this every day, not for a week, not for a month, but for 6 months. At the end of his time, he heard a rumor that the Nazis were coming into that little village, and they were going to come and inspect each farm, house, and each barn, and they were going to be looking very closely for hidden Jews. So he figured out that what he should do was he told these 10 people that night he was not putting the ladder up, that they were going to have to, I think for a couple of nights, just stay there. And they were not allowed to go down at night. He didn't want any movement. He didn't want any trace. And mostly he didn't want a ladder that if somebody came and inspected, they'd see where's the ladder going to, and they might go up and look. So he said, no ladder, and that's going to be the best thing to happen. So unfortunately, one of the people in the loft forgot that there was no ladder, and he fell out of the loft. The next morning, my father found him with a broken back. The only thing he could do was take him to the hospital, where he knew the man would be sent to his certain death. The other 9 people were saved, they survived the war, and they thrived in their lives after the war. I saw my father as a hero, but he was haunted by the death of this one person. Humility, bravery, hard work, and doing for others defined my father throughout his life. He told me many stories of narrowly escaping death himself, trying to help others do the same. A true hero. When my father was a child, he talked about being the only one of 10 children. There were 10 kids in the family. But he was the one, not the oldest one, but he was the one to get up early in the morning. They lived on a farm, to help milk the cows and help his mother prepare food for the family for the day. And he felt really good about doing the work and being the one to help others. When my father came to the United States, times were very hard. He came with no money, no language, and he was told the night that he arrived at the pier in New York that the relative who had sponsored him, in fact, did not have a bed for him to sleep, and he needed to find another place to stay. He gave him the number of a rabbi, and he told him to call a rabbi. Welcome to the United States. Despite this, he used his many skills and talents, and he eventually went into the kosher butcher business. I believe, of course I'm a little biased, he developed the premier kosher meat market in Cleveland. But perhaps more important for him than selling meat were the relationships that he developed with the people in the community. He was friends with everyone. He helped young brides learn how to cook. He helped people who had never kept kosher learn how to keep kosher. He helped people plan their family dinner events and holidays. And he stopped everything to give a slice of salami to each child walking through the door. He felt good about making people happy. My father had a very special relationship with my mother. They were third cousins, and he followed her to the United States. They worked together as a team, and she felt secure in the world after losing her entire family because of him, knowing that he was at her side. And she, of blessed memory, was the wind beneath his wings. As for me, their first child, after the devastating losses, marked a new beginning. I know I was the apple of my father's eye. He was proud of me. In an unstated way, he supported me throughout my life, whatever I tried to do. I knew my parents were vicariously living through me, and I tried to make them feel good about whatever they pursued. But it's not just me they loved and that they got nachas from. It was from everyone that touched their lives. They enjoyed seeing all of you thrive and tried to help whenever they could. Yes, I was blessed. We were all blessed to have my father as our hero. I want to take this opportunity to thank the many wonderful, kind, nurturing, devoted caregivers my father had through the past 5.5 years. It truly takes a village to help steer someone through dementia. And we were fortunate to have a fantastic group of people in our village. I'm only going to mention a few. There were many, and our family appreciates all of them greatly. I want to thank you to Maria for all of your care, cooking, to Robin, to Anna, to Ray, to Carrie, but I especially wanted to acknowledge Norma. Norma lived with my parents and took care of my parents for the past 5.5 years. I believe God sent me an angel whose name is Norma. May we each hold on to the wonderful memories of my father. Thank you all for your love and your support.
Call upon son David Altman.
My father was a caring, loving, strong, and smart person. He had many friends. His life was defined, however, by the Shoah, and further by his special relationship with my late mother, Zichrono Livracha. He was a man of honor and had great respect for elders. He was always there to help others in need. Being a survivor who lost much family in the Shoah, family was especially precious to him. He loved his kids, his grandkids, his great-grandkids, and he especially loved my wife, Leah. He was one of 10 children, only 6 of which survived the Shoah, and had to start from scratch after the Shoah. He got off the boat at Ellis Island with $20 in his pocket and was served with papers that very day to fight in the Korean War. In those days, you had a deferment if you got married. And so he married my mother civilly, and then they had a Jewish ceremony a short while later, and started to build a family. He didn't speak any English. He needed a job at the start, and he was very skilled. He had, in Europe, he had actually built a truck actually by himself. He was an auto mechanic. So he started to work in that area in New York when he first moved here in 1948. He lived there from 48 to 51 before he moved to Cleveland. And the problem was that in those days there was no Civil Rights Act. And if you wanted to be religious and keep Shabbos, you had no protection. And so what he did was the very first week that he worked at the auto mechanics, he didn't come on Shabbos. And they asked him on Sunday, where were you? He said, well, I wasn't feeling good. So he worked the rest of the next week. And at the end of the second week, he didn't show up again for Shabbos. And they asked him again, where were you? He says, I didn't feel good. And they said, do you think you might be sick again next week? Because if you think so, you don't need to show up anymore. And so he drifted from that area, and he had a knack. He worked well with furniture. The first furniture we had in our home was built with his own hands. He built the sofa, he built the chaise lounge, he even tufted the drapes himself. So he was skilled, but times were tough in those days, and they wanted him to work on Shabbos again. And he didn't go there. So he said, well, what can I possibly do? And so his family was in the farming business in Slovakia, and so he was not a stranger to Shchita. And he had somebody who he knew from Czechoslovakia that worked for the Satmar Shchita for Glotmark, and got him a job working in the meat business over there. And that's how he ended up working there, and he didn't have to worry about working on Shabbos anymore. So Shabbos was very important for him. When you look at somebody who survives a Shoah, it's not easy for them when they come to the United States They don't have any money. They don't speak any language. And they've had major losses in their life. And so how does somebody retain their resilience, to keep on moving on with their life? What gets them to go? And so, as I said earlier, he had this close relationship with my mother. It was a very loving relationship. And they worked together unbelievably in the business, but not just that, being gomle chesed to others, and doing things for people that you would not consider. Later on when he came to Cleveland, he worked for a few different butchers, became a partner, and then bought out a partnership and had his own business that he was in for 50 years. No small feat. The thing that he did was, though, he cared about people. On Erev Shabbos, people would come into the store, and he could tell people who were in need. And he made sure that they, when they left the store, that they had what they needed. Sometimes at zero cost, sometimes at his cost, but he tried to make sure that was done. And he also did that in a way that nobody should know. So how do you get that from the Shoah? When there's all that hatred. So I think part of it has to do with an inner strength, and some of it is built in your family structure. He saw it in his family and prior generations as well. And what you've got to do is you got to take a look at what creates somebody's strength. So my sister told this incredible story about how my father was a hero, but in this one area with the farm, which was an amazing feat, I wanted to tell you one other story, and that is at the beginning of the war, my father's family were farmers, and farmers were given a higher status because they were creating food for the military. And so instead of, the Nazis would put them in labor camps for things, they wouldn't be put in concentration camps. And they were the type of camps that you could leave at night and come back the next morning. But they did have barbed wire. It wasn't electrified. But over time, if you stayed there long enough, the Nazis, found a way to get you trapped there and move you to a concentration camp. And what he did was, with a number of family and friends, was he found a way to break through the barbed wire and escaped. And as he escaped through, the Nazis were on a tower and had a machine gun, and he got a bullet in his shoulder. And so, he was able to survive that. He was determined to do what he could to basically survive. So then you take a look at my father's life when I was a kid growing up. So what did I see? I saw him work extremely hard. I saw him being very kind to people, doing things without people knowing about it. I saw him active in the Kashrus Committee of the Jewish Community Federation for many years, dealing with hashgacha, and the politics of all that. I also saw that, he found a way to enjoy life, and what brought him there was family. He lost family. The kids grew up. They had kids of their own, and Baruch Hashem, the family grew, and he got the zechus and the nachas from watching all the kids and the grandkids grow to be something special. And he did this even though during the time in the Shoah, he was forced to go to church because he looked like an Aryan. He had to play the part of being an Aryan. He had to go to confession every Sunday. And he had to do what he had to do to survive. Some people, when they came to America, they couldn't handle that part anymore for whatever reason. But he stuck to his guns, and he did the right thing. And that's what we saw, and that's what we were able to convey to our kids and our grandkids. My father was always resolute. He was positive. He was there to assist anybody in any way possible, the same way that he did during the Shoah when he saved those 10 people. He also was an advisor to people. People came to him because they knew he was street smart, and he would give them good advice. He's responsible for many shidduchim in the Cleveland area. He and my mother together, they were quite the pair in getting people together. People like my father are hard to find. Okay, if one can learn anything from my father's actions, it's to stay positive, be gomel chesed, live a full life. My father will be missed. May his neshama have an aliyah next to much of his family in Segula, in Petah Tikva, where he will be buried in a family plot, an idea which he conceived.
Now we go from generation to generation, calling upon his grandchildren, Adam Weeder and Shayna Ziff.
First of all, thank everybody for coming. This was the Altman home. We'd be handing out cookies or kuchen now. Make sure everybody had something to eat because that's the way it works in the house. A piece of salami. What can you learn from a piece of cured meat? If you ever had the privilege to be around our Zaidi or our Bubby, you know there's actually a lot that can be learned. Shane and I wanted to share some of the values that we learned from a piece of salami. It starts with how to treat people. Being caring and loving. What connection does the butcher have to the 2-year-old kid coming into his store? What motivates the guy behind the deli counter to share a piece of salami with a 2-year-old kid? 2 pieces of salami. It's about caring. It's about connection. It's about love. And that love was sincere. It was warm. It was genuine. It was consistent throughout. It was generous. It was overflowing in generosity. The love knew no bounds. And right along with my grandfather was Bubby, Israel Ezer Kenegdo, his partner in everything he did. In their butcher shop, in their home, in their community, in their life, and most importantly to them, in building their family. What else can you learn from salami? About the value of hard work. Not just the hard work at his meat market, but clearly the hard work at his meat market. Getting up early every day, trying to get to the slaughterhouse before the others so he could bring the best cuts of meat to his customers. Putting in countless hours, but it didn't just start and stop at the doors of the butcher shop. Whether it was in his yard, or on a plumbing project at his house, or our house or anybody else's house, whether he knew you or not. He picked up friends at shul and decided they needed some help. He was there too. And his hard work with his family as well was unbelievable in ways that were both subtle and not so subtle, working with his family. Piece of Salami taught us the importance of food and family. And what does that mean? Food for my grandparents was a way of connecting with people, a way of getting people together. Our friends have joined us in their home for a cookie, a piece of kuchen, a meal, Sudash Lishit, and sometimes even just cholent. You wouldn't believe, but after lunch, if we were walking past their house, they'd invite us in and they happen to have cholent. After lunch, just in case somebody came by. We had meals at their homes almost every Sunday as we were growing up. Steaks on the grill, Bubby making French fries. And it wasn't about the food. It was about the importance of family and connecting and the generosity. And what a house it was. A house whose doors were open for everybody. Whether you came for a cup of coffee, whether you came for some advice, or whether you were new to this country and didn't have a place to go, their house was open for a night, a week, month, years. It didn't matter. And not only was their house open, it was open with overwhelming generosity and that same love we talked about. All it takes is to sit around their Shabbat table and hear the Zmirot, the never-ending supply of food. It was just a certain sense that you picked up in their house. And those Zmirot, that music, that love of music and a way of connecting is something that never left him until his last day. Yesterday we had a really magical experience at my grandfather's bedside. We knew he was struggling, and we had some of our dear cousins came by, and we stood there surrounding his bed, and we started singing Zmirot, his favorite Zmirot. And he was laying there, and he opened his eyes, stark, stared around, looked at everybody, made eye contact with the people that were there, and then started moving his mouth along with the words that we were singing. Amazing. It's what he knew. The rabbi alluded to it. When dementia set in and he didn't necessarily know where he was and didn't have his bearings, and he went wandering, the first place we went to go look for him was Green Road Synagogue. And with like 90% success, that's where he was. Because that's what he knew. It's the one thing he did every day of his life. That's what he knew. And he ingrained that in us.
My Zadie gave generous a different definition than what normal people think of when they think of generous. I mean, there was not enough that he could do to make you feel comfortable, to make you feel happy, to make you just be good. He was appreciative of everything that anyone did, even if it was someone like behind the scenes. He would get smoked turkeys from the store, and he would give them to all of like the city workers. He would give them to the fire department. He would drop them off on holidays. When he was away in Florida, he would ship crates of oranges to his doctors and his dentists, and he was very appreciative of everybody and every thing that they did for him, and he couldn't do enough back for everybody else. He was strong in every sense of the word. He was hardworking. He was kind. He was so gentle. He loved children. They just lit him up. He would to the very, very end. That would just always put a smile on his face. As soon as you put a kid in front of him, he would lean over to give him kisses. Not just one, like repetitive kisses. It was amazing. Last Sunday, all of my kids, every single one of them, he took so much joy in taking care of everybody in the community, whether it was from salami or other things that we don't know about. And I know that we all feel really grateful because we feel like the community, you all took care of him also. As he got older and he would kind of like find himself in places, everybody here would pull over and ask him if he needed to go somewhere, or they would just, everyone took care of him back, and that was a wonderful feeling that we all got to have. Our cousin Marshall in New York sent me something to say. I'm going to say from Marshall. People will talk about the meat market, how Zadie knew everyone at shul, his perseverance through the Holocaust, and how he realized the American dream. And some may even note how he would regularly help himself to go into the kitchen at a restaurant if the food was taking too long to come out. Those things are all true and all impressive. But what I'll remember most is how he greeted me so warmly, with so much joy each and every time he saw me. I felt his love in every greeting, every single time. I will miss him so much, and we all will.
So,
Sorry. Not everybody knows me, but I'm married to Shayna. It's generally my claim to fame around here. So one thing I just want to mention, and forgive me for not making eye contact, other I'm just going to start bawling, which may happen anyways. In addition to all the things that were said about Zadie, which, by the way, I was trying to explain to my boss. I just started a new job, and I said to my boss, it's a lot going on. And I was like trying to explain it. So my wife's grandfather passed away, and it was weird for me to say that because he was just Zadie. But he used to get up early every morning to get the meat or whatever. But he also would get up earlier so he could recite, correct me if I'm wrong, the entire book of Tehillim, like every day. Sorry if I stole your thunder there. But that I found that mind-boggling. It's hard for me to get out of bed at 6, and this guy's getting up at like 2 in the morning to say all of Tehillim. And I opened the Tehillim, and the very first thing says, Ashrei Haish. That trick didn't work. Fortunate is the man asher lo halach batzad reshaim, that never followed the countenance of the wicked, the counsel of the wicked, excuse me. V'derech chatayim lo amad, and the path of the sinners never stood. Uv'moshav leitzim lo yashav, and never sat around with fools. Well, Zadie was always busy, and he was always busy doing mitzvah, as you heard. So I'll just share one story quickly, be brief. So I believe the very first time, you knew this was coming, the very first time I met Bubby and Zadie was in Miami Beach. Beautiful, at a place right on Collins, sweet location. And I should add, by way of my defense, that I don't come from this kind of, a family, several generations American. And so we came in, and they were, of course, over the top, welcoming, warm. So good to see you, so nice to meet you. And I'm shaking hands, and I'm being ushered into their apartment with great fanfare. And Shana Zaidi says to me, "What can I get you? Anything you want." And so me, having a little bit of a sense of humor, I said, "How about," just first thing that popped in my head, "how about some guava juice?" Well, that stumped him. And little did I know that me putting my foot in my mouth, he spent the next, I would say 17 years, but it's probably more like 10 years, paying me back and giving me every wish thing every time I walked in the house. "What can we get you?" And just eat more. And, as his children, his actual children said, grandchildren and children have said, his generosity was really something to behold. And the world is poorer for having lost him.
One second. While I have, might as well. I'm going to keep it very short. I just have to basically out loud say thank you to Zaidi, because in all honesty, he took this not knowing much girl and made me the ball buster I hoped to be. And he was treated Bubby like his Ashes Chayil, and he has taught his children and his grandchildren how to treat their wives and children. And I forever will be grateful. Thank you, Zaidi. We love you so much.
We can't stand here and not acknowledge the tremendous dedication and kibbud avayim that's shown by our mother. Mom, put your life on hold to take care of your parents 24/7. The values that they wanted to instill in you and the next generations couldn't be demonstrated any more clearly than the love and the dedication, the complete and total dedication that you've shown. The shoes are tremendous. We can only hope we'll be able to do half of what you did for your parents. It's truly amazing. Just on behalf of everybody that's been involved in caring for Zaidi, I want to ask forgiveness in case there's anything that we could have done differently, anything we could have done better to honor you. You deserve only the best. Yehi zichro baruch.
Now we move on to the next generation, the great-grandchildren, Nathan and Daphna. Weeder will say a few words.
Actually, Lori also wanted to say something, so before we begin, Lori.
When we were coming home from Zaidi's house, Mommy was she was like, well, Zaidi is really sick, and he doesn't really recognize any of us, he doesn't know who we are really, but,
he still has such a good soul. So whenever we come over, even if he doesn't know who we are, he always gives us kisses. And he's always so nice to us.
I think Zadie really truly knew what family meant. See, a normal weekend in the life of the family and of the Weeders and Altmans went like this. Friday after school, we went to our house, we got into the car, and we were like, it's time to go to Zadie's. We get to Bubby and Zadie's. First thing we get is a welcome, how are you? Take some food. And as we're eating, we hear all the gossip that's going around, all the Jewish news. We read it out loud. Then we take a potato to go home for Friday night dinner. Every Shabbos morning during davening, Zadie would have his Zadie bags that were wafers, a dark chocolate, and a lollipop. And you would always go up to him, and right away he knew right away, and to see his eyes light up the way that they did, he'd go in, he'd chop your cheek, he'd give you a kiss, and he'd give you the Zadie bag. And then after that, there's always a Sudash sheet that was untraditional, because they didn't care about anyone, about any amount of people that you wanted to bring, or who it was. They wanted you to be there, and they wanted it to be a family. There was so much food every time. And then it ended with a late Havdalah that my Zadie did with hard alcohol. So when he put the Havdalah candle back in, and it would light up, and I was like, oh my God. It was amazing. And that's really him. He would do amazing things, really, just so he can see smiles on people and really cheer people up. Before camp, we would go to him to say our goodbyes, and he would give us a salami and a giant kuchen and a $20 bill. And as I look around the room, there are people here who might not have even met him, or might not have even had the opportunity to talk to him, but just know about him. And there's so many stories of him going to people's houses that didn't know him, but he knew that they were struggling, and he would drop off a box of meat before Shabbos. They didn't know him, they didn't know why they had that meat, but he knew that they were struggling. And that's who he was. My dad shared the story yesterday. He was extremely family oriented, that when our family was there, when we were singing those murals, it woke him up. The nurse that was there thought it was incredible. His blood circulation it was getting better, and his life was based around family, and to be part of that family was just a bracha in itself, and all of you guys were part of his family. He knew that you guys loved him, and he loved all of you guys also. And I want to thank you guys, because you're part of my family now. And he truly believed that, and he was willing to do anything for all of you guys.
I'll just conclude with saying that our Zadie was everyone's Zadie. And much like the stories that were alluded to earlier, like, kids in shul would walk around with these Zadie bags on Shabbos, and I didn't know who the kids were. I'm like, those are my Zadie bags. What are you doing with them? And trading lollipops, and, Sudash Lishit was very big for them, for my Bubby and Zadie. I would bring back, it was after B'nai Akiva, obviously, and we would bring back, 5-6 friends each, and it didn't matter. They would, rotate the table like it was clockwork to make sure everyone could sit at the table and there was enough food. They never ran out of food. And we'd go to the backyard and play, and if someone fell and, God forbid, got a little scrape, there was always just schmear for it. There was just a quick solution to make everyone feel better. So my Zaidi wasn't just my Zaidi, he wasn't just our Zaidi, but he was the community's Zaidi, and we will dearly miss him.
So if the great-grandchildren were a little older, they'd also be up here to speak. But at this time, the time is getting longer, so we will have to finish. But our beloved Mr. Altman will go on to Israel, and he will be buried there in a holy place, and once again be meritorious of many beautiful eulogies and words of praise of who he was as a person. So at this moment, in a short while, we will rise for the moral prayer. But before we say that, we just should dwell on, I think, the fact that his name was Simcha. His name was happiness. And when his mother birthed him, or his father, they knew that he had this great potential to bring the world joy and happiness. And what a great feeling of joy for him that he was able to accomplish that task all he went through. And not only was he a Simcha, he had a double dose because he was Simcha HaKohen. And God gave him the role of being the one who blessed the nation. And you can picture him up there on Yom Tov, on the festivals, with the talit over his fingers, sending the blessing that God sent through his fingers to his people. Imagine how good he would have felt, blessing the people and sending them on their way with good things. And so I'm sure that's how he would do it right now. You know, he'd be sending us all on our way with the blessing that only a kohen can give. You know, Yavarchach Adonai Yishmerecha, Yer Adonai Panav Elecha, V'chunecha V'yisem Lecha Shalom. At this moment, I ask that everyone please rise for the Kamali Rachmim, which will be recited by a beloved family member, Moshe Lovinger.
Rachamim Sholchein B'Maromim Hamitzvei Menucha Nechana Aval Ala Kanefei Ashechieno B'Malos Kedoshim Utehorim Kizoar Rokia Mazirim Ese Nishmas Simcha ben Akiva Kohen Sheholach Le'olamo Bavur She'anachanu Nosnim et Tzedoko Bi'adas Koras Nishmoso Began Eden, Tehei Menuchaso, Lachein Baal Rachamim, Yastireu B'Seiser Kenofo, V'Leolamim, V'Yitzror B'Yitzror Achayim, Esen Nishmoso. Adonai hu nachalo vaso v'yanuach al mishkavo v'shalom v'nomar amen.
God full of mercy, who dwells on high, grant proper rest on the wings of the divine presence, in the lofty levels of the holy and the pure ones who shine like the glow of the firmament, for the soul of our beloved Simcha, the son of Akiva, the Kohen, who has gone into his world and for whom we pray. May his resting place be in the Garden of Eden, and may the Master of Mercy shelter him in the shelter of his wings for all eternity, and may he repose in peace on his resting place. And we say together, Amen. If we just remain standing for just one moment briefly for the announcements, that following the service today, Mr. Altman will go in procession, will go with a special transport to the airport, and the burial service will occur in Israel on Tuesday about 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock in Petach Tikva. And the mourners, the son and daughter, will be going with the deceased to Israel, so there'll be no Shiva until their return. They will be returning Wednesday, and so beginning Wednesday, there will be Shiva times and hours at the home of Michael and Mickey Weeder, 24460 Greenwich Lane. There will be Shiva from 2 to 5, 7 to 10, and there will be a daily Mincha Ma'ariv service at 8:40 and a Shachrit morning service at 7 a.m. That will be Shiva on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and look on the calendars and stuff for the special times on Thursday and Friday. And the family asks if donations are wished. They can be given to the Cleveland Kosher Food Bank, the Green Road Synagogue, or to the Fuchs Mizrahi School. We're going to remain standing, please, if the pallbearers could come forward, and we're assist in the respecting of the honoring in the procession.